Morning. Thank you for attending our talk. We are going to talk about breaking full disk encryption, in particular BitLocker. Two disclaimers. First of all, we are standing on the shoulders of giants. Nothing that is presented here is brand new material. We are just aggregating different types of attacks and giving you a landscape of what exists and what works in practice and what works more like in the lab. Second thing, we are not advising against BitLocker. We actually think it's a pretty good solution when it's properly configured. The reason that we attack it is simply because it's the most popular and the most researched product on the market at the moment. Okay, how does BitLocker function under the hood? First of all, you have your data on your hard drive. It's your C volume. That data is encrypted with the full volume encryption key, the FVEK. That key is stored where? Also on the disk. That's a problem, so we need to encrypt it as well. So we encrypt that FVEK with another key, the VMK, which is also stored on the disk. So what do we need to do? We need to encrypt it as well. We will have multiple copies of the VMK that are sealed or encrypted with what we call key protectors, which are essentially ways to derive key or to store keys outside of the ecosystem of the storage. So you have, for example, the TPM, the recovery key, TPM plus pin startup key, which is a USB drive, passphrase, or the clear key, which is a blank key that allows you to decrypt the data without having to enter anything. So that's the way it works when you suspend BitLocker, for example. It doesn't actually decrypt the data; it just overrides the key protector with a fixed blank key. Why do we do this? So we don't have to decrypt and re-encrypt the data every time we suspend or rotate the key. So we have multiple options for decryption methods. That's why we have multiple copies of the VMK. And so we ensure performance. It's not the TPM, so the chip that contains the top level key that does the decryption. It's done at a lower level. So the TPM, what is the TPM? The TPM is essentially a hardware or firmware component that provides secure storage for authentication artifact. That can be keys, certificates, and so on. There are two main versions, 2.0 and 1.2. We are going to focus mostly on 2.0 because it's the most recent one and it's the one that is required by Windows 11. The TPM types, we have three main types. Discrete TPMs, which is an actual chip that is soldered to your motherboard. The firmware TPM, which is a TPM that is emulated inside your CPU. It exists on most modern generations of CPUs. And the virtual TPM, which is more for cloud and virtualization stacks. We are going to focus mostly on the two top ones for this talk. How does decryption work? When you boot your computer, there are a few measurements that will be made during the boot process, and those measurements will be sent to the TPM and stored in what we call PCR registers. A PCR register is just a small memory block inside the TPM to store those measurements. By default, BitLocker uses only PCR 7 and 11, which are basically checking that all boot components are signed. That's for secure boot with PCR 7. That same PCR that all UEFI security settings have not been changed. And PCR 11 is a bit of a special case. It's used to ensure that keys can be unlocked after the system has been boot. There are multiple options. It can be configured, but that's the default configuration. So when it boots, it writes the measurements inside the PCR registers, and then at the end, the VMK, the sealed VMK, so the encrypted top level key, is sent to the TPM to be decrypted. The TPM verifies if the values that have been measured during boot match known good values, and if it does, the TPM unseals the VMK, so it decrypts it with its internal key and sends it back to the CPU, which writes the VMK in plain text in the RAM. Then that unsealed VMK can be used to decrypt the FVK, which in turn can be used to decrypt the data itself. So everything stays encrypted on the disk. It's just the in-memory and when we access the data that is decrypted on the fly. How do we attack BitLocker? So we have, first of all, why do we attack BitLocker? We can use that to bypass the Windows login prompt and access data offline without leaving a trace. We could elevate local privileges by modifying service executable or changing the local admin credentials. You could use those privileges then to, in a red team assessment, to find more classic vulnerabilities or privilege escalation vectors. You could then, for example, establish persistence or plant backdoors or cripple security software. Or you could create, and that's one of our favorites, create a virtual clone of the target laptop to test your payloads in a secure environment without risking triggering the EDR of your client. So, here are the different ways or the different location where we could extract the keys. The first one is actually finding the recovery key. That's the easiest, and sometimes you're just lucky. The second one is to find the keys in the RAM, but you have to find a way to dump the RAM after the system has booted. The third way is to capture the TPM communication as it sends back the key at the end of the boot process. There are a few other things you could try to brute force the keys, but it's not really practical, or try to break the TPM, but again, not really practical. So the first attack vector is the recovery keys in M365. This is extremely common because by default, if you have an Entra ID environment and you enroll your device in there and assign owners, the owner will have the right to access their own BitLocker recovery key. It's really easy to mitigate now because it's just a setting in Entra ID. If you want to check, you go to myaccount.microsoft.com in Devices tab, and you can see if you can access your device keys or not. Second vector, dumping the RAM. One of the options is to use DMA, direct memory access. There's extensive work here by Ulf Frisk. He has published a lot of research and tools to help you do that. Basically, what we do is we hook a FPGA, a special hardware device, to an interface on the motherboard that has access to the memory directly. There are modern protections against this. It's enabled by default. Normally, you can't do that. When you do that, your device gets isolated in its own memory space by the IOMMU and the kernel DMA protection. There is a lesser known way to bypass that. If you can actually override something in the RAM before the OS boots, you can corrupt the table that push the configurations to the OS to enable that feature. So if you corrupt it at boot, Windows boots normally, and you can bypass the IOMMU. The mitigation against that is simply to enable pre-boot DMA protection inside the firmware. So before the OS boots, there should be no possibility to do DMA. At the top, for each attack, at the top, you will see headache index is how complex it is. Luck required is how reliable it is. Wallet impact is the financial cost of the hardware that we use. And the shopping list is essentially the requirements that you need to have to perform this attack. Second attack is BitPixie. BitPixie is, BitPixie is, software vulnerability in the boot manager of Windows. It has been patched, but essentially, let's look at how the unlocking works when you boot over the network. So using Pixie, hence the name. So when you boot over the network, your computer, the UEFI will fetch the boot manager from the network, so from the attacker control space. It will, if all the parameters are right, it will unlock the BitLocker volume and then call winload.efe, which in turn will load the Windows kernel. But all of that is under the control of the attacker because it's served through the PXE server. What happens if you serve a corrupted boot configuration? If you serve a corrupted boot configuration, the winload.efe will not, for example, load here. We will revert back to the bootmanager.efe, which will unlock which will have unlocked the BitLocker key. It's supposed to clean the memory before going to the recovery option. The problem is all the vulnerable boot manager forget this part. It's patched now, except that the boot manager is under the control of the attacker, so nothing prevents you from loading or pushing an older version that is vulnerable. The mitigation against that, the only really effective one, is to revoke the sign-in authority that signed those older boot managers. Few more exotic vectors. First of all, we have the cold boot attack. It's a classic freezing the RAM to try to keep some of the data in there and then transplant it in a attacker controlled machine, or trying to dump the RAM from boot. It's hard. There are a few caveats on modern machines. There's something called a more bit, it's a memory override request bit that basically wipes the RAM when you reboot the machine, and it's really hard to perform, but it's not impossible. It's been done by F-Secure and Securitium, with Secure and Securitium recently. We have Intel DCI, which is a special debug interface for Intel platforms. It's hard to enable. You need to modify the UEFI, so it's not really realistic. And the hardware fault injection, well, we are a free letter company, not a free letter agency, so we don't really have the capability to do that.
So let's move to the sniffing of the TPM traffic. This is the one where we got the most success. So as Edouard said, the idea is to sniff the traffic between the CPU and the TPM. So the traffic is on a bus. It could be LPC or I2C, but mostly on modern devices is SPI. So the traffic is flowing between the TPM and the CPU unencrypted. So using a logic analyzer, we can probe on the bus and sniff the traffic and get the key. So what do we use? A standard logic analyzer, we have one here, it's around 300 euros. We go for DS Logic, you can go for Salai or other logic analyzers, and we need probes. There is standard probes for standard packages, but sometimes it's not that standard, and you need to probe on specific points of the motherboard. And the idea here is to use PCBit probes that you will put at specific points you have to find. So how do we find where to hook? So the hardest way is on the TPM chip itself, but the thing is that if you hook on the TPM itself, it's mostly on the, let's say, bad side of the motherboard. We have the side that's right under the cover, and we have another side that's under the keyboard. So to reach the side under the keyboard, it's hard. You need to disassemble the whole laptop, and you may break some stuff, and the pads are really tiny and quite hard to probe on the pad of the TPM itself. Otherwise, we have the manufacturer test pads. It's more an IPC stuff. We don't see it on modern devices. We don't see it that lot on SPI. There are some manufacturer test pads on SPI, but they are really small, even smaller than the TPM chip itself, so doesn't really make sense. And the best way, the way to go, the way we will do it today in our demo, is directly on the SPI BIOS chip. So why on the BIOS? We are talking about TPM, but the thing to know is the SPI bus has 3 shared lines. So MISO, MOSI, and clock, and one dedicated line, which is a chip select. So chip select will say, hey, I'm talking, so it will flip a state up. So he's talking, and when the TPM is talking, the chip select will trigger, and vice versa. But if you take the shared lines, let's say we don't have the chip select, we plug on the BIOS, we take all of the shared lines, we will see the wall traffic, TPM traffic, and BIOS traffic. We cannot filter it out because we don't have the chip select, which is on the, let's say, bad side of the motherboard. So the idea is now, as we have all the wall traffic, can we extract the traffic of interest, which is only the TPM traffic? We can't filter out noise because we are missing the chip select. And for that kind of attack, you need to sniff in, let's say, quite fast. If the TPM is speaking at 24 megahertz, you need to sniff, you need to listen at least 4 or 5 times faster than the signal itself. It's not 100% reliable because we are not soldering directly on the chip itself. We are putting probes, we are putting clips. So there could be some disruptances, but usually after 1 or 2 tries, we got the key. So how do we get the key? So it's TPM traffic, TPM frames. It's basically saying, hey, I want to read 1 byte. Then there is from a specific register, and then there is a reply that's a byte. So we take the bytes, we concatenate them one by one. We have a long hexadecimal string. We are looking for a specific header, which is 2C0005, standard to the TPM frames. And once we have that, we know that what will follow just after the header is the clear text VMK. We extract it and we do our attack. But let's see it live. We'll try to do it live. We don't have a
small
demo.
Disclaimer. We don't have a film demo, so we don't have a backup. If it goes wrong, just come to our workshop.
So yeah, we remove the cover. That's it. We'll try to zoom a bit. So. It's good enough.
So you see the chip we are going to hook to is this one. Oh, you moved the camera. Here we go. Here we go. It's this one. It's the BIOS chip that is right here, because we can recognize it easily because it's much bigger than the other chips.
Anyway, we'll leave it like this.
Can you see it?
Nope. Here's the chip. Where's my finger?
There we go.
Okay. So the idea here is we have a Pomona clip. It's a SOIC 8 package, standard package for BIOSes, maybe not the new ones, but it looks like this. We put the MISO, MOSI, and the clock, and 1 ground is enough. Sorry. Here. Plugged into our DS logic analyzer that we have here, small analyzer. So the idea is to find the first pin, which is over there. I don't think, yeah, which is over there. And we plug it like this. So once we have it, we have a software called DSView, which is here. So it's pre-configured, but the idea is to configure all the pins.
That's the software that helps us convert the electrical signal and actually decode it into bits and bytes.
So we start the laptop, we sniff, we wait a bit. We have a specific decoder. So the standard decoder that's coming with DSView is not working because of the disruptances. You need a perfect capture, and we never have a perfect capture. So we developed a new decoder that's working quite well.
What we used to do at the beginning, the first time we did this attack, is just making multiple tries, one after the other, and then combining and trying to fill in the gaps because it didn't break at the same place every time. But now we have implemented some additional logic just to get rid of the broken packets, and we can manage to get the key in one go, in general.
So we know out of experience that the first blob is the BIOS thing, so we don't try to decode the BIOS because there's a lot of traffic coming in and out. So the idea is to come just after the BIOS. So we put the cursor here. We say that we want to start the decoding process from here. I will disable all the, let's say, we'll keep only the transactions and the VMK. And hopefully, so we start to see some TPM traffic, and here is the VMK. So we got it.
Thank you. But it's not done. What do we do with that?
So what do we do with that is, once we have the VMK, we have the NVMe adapter that's just right here. I will switch off the laptop to extract the disk. Up. So we remove the disk. We put it in our NVMe adapter. We'll leave it like this. Plug it into our laptop. So access is denied because BitLocker is on. Oh, I didn't save the capture. But anyway, I have the key. So you saw the key. It was this one. I have it here. So we have the key. We have an encrypted disk. It is attached to our Windows. We just check it. It's physical drive 2. I will mount it on my WSL. So yeah, it's done. And if you go here, if the tool that we use is DiskLocker, so you will find it on GitHub. It's an open source tool. You have to compile it from source, not from APT.
The version that is on APT is outdated, and with this specific drive, it didn't work, for example.
So we have the key here. We take the hexadecimal text format, we put it in a binary format. So once we have the key, we know that we have a mounted disk over here. You can even check it like this. So here, that's the disk. So that's the BitLocker partition, quite small because we use it for a workshop. So the idea now is to use DiskLocker fuse using the key, the mounted drive over here, and where we will mount the DiskLocker file. The mount points were already created for the talk. So we did mount it.
So basically, it unencrypts the BitLocker drive, but in a virtual way. So you will have an intermediary file called DiskLocker. What is it? DiskLocker file, I think.
I think it's DiskLocker file, yeah.
So you have an intermediary file, and that one is basically a virtual representation of your NTFS system. And that one you can mount with mount like you would any other disk image.
So yeah, the idea is to mount it with mount. So there we go. So we mount it. There is a small issue because I turned off the laptop the hard way. So, but that could be fixed. But
it's read-only at the moment, but you can just remove the flags and.
So yeah, let's go into the disk. We have the disk. We have the users. So starting from that point, let's move. So we unlock the full disk. We have access to everything. We have access to some registry, whatever. You have a way to go for local admin to backdoor the PC and to do quite a lot of stuff. So we have the key. Post exploitation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, if you want to take a photo of this one, it's the commands we did just before in the VM.
By the way, the special decryptor that the special decoder that we showcased in the tool will be published during our workshop later today.
So we have the key. What's the point of having the key? There's quick and dirty ways of Privesk, change anti-password, which will remove the password of admin or whatever account you have in SAM. Replace any executable as system, so utilman, narrator, or any services. There are more advanced things you can do is TLL hijacking, SAM cracking is not that advanced, but it's slow. And copy the disk to investigate potential Privesk. So you made a virtual image of the disk, you mount it with VirtualBox, VMware, whatever, and you go into it, you analyze everything, and maybe you will get a Privesk that you can use on other devices of the company you are working for. What else? So not only Privest, you can disable EDR. So it's working, renaming the file, delete the drivers, inject drivers. There's multiple ways, but it's working quite well. We did it, and it's a good way of evading detections. You can extract secrets. Sometimes you have some secrets lying on the disk, so you can grep it using Linux. You can grep it using other tools you have to extract secrets, and you can put backdoors like overlaps that was presented by Antoine with sitting over here. So, small decision tree for red teamers. So the idea is you have a laptop, so what can we do as a red teamer? Is BitLocker enabled or not? If it's not enabled, quick win. There is a pin, a BitLocker pin, or there is no pin, or we know the pin, because if you know the pin, you can still do an insider attack. So if there is no pin, you can still extract the keys from Entra ID, quick win again. Then the attack that we just did here is extract VMK from SPI bus. If there is a pin, there is a way to decode it. If there is no pin, there is another decoder for it. So we didn't have a pin here. If it's not a deep DTPM, if it's impossible to disassemble the laptop, like the Microsoft Surface, they have strange plastic over it and you cannot really disassemble it. There is a the BitPixie way. So also if it works, then again a win. And as from now, we are starting on some hard solutions, hard techniques. It's cold boot attacks. Could work if the RAM is not soldered on the board. If the RAM is soldered on the board, it's starting to be quite hard. And otherwise, exotic vectors, you take the laptop, send it to NSA, and you have your VMK. One other easy win is call the help desk. Hey, can you give the BitLocker key? And you have it. We are running out of time.
Detection for blue teamers doesn't look good because those attacks leave barely any trace. The thing is, for the detection, it's complicated, and that's also why we don't really know if that's actively used by threat actors in the wild. We can only speculate. What we can do as blue teamers is actually mitigate those. First of all, change your default M365 settings. Pre-boot DMA protection, IOMU and kernel DMA protection will help you against direct memory access. For modern, very modern laptops, it's enabled by default, so usually that's already covered. Memory encryption is something that we don't see enabled too much, but that could protect against cold boot attacks. We have blocking the CA to prevent bitpixies. The FTPM instead of DTPM to sniff the bus, but that's not always possible, and enable chassis covered tamper protection, but that's easily bypassed because an attacker who knows the model of laptop they are attacking, they can just cut around the chassis to not trigger this. The most important one, I guess, is the BitLocker TPM plus pin. The problem is it's also the one that is the most difficult to implement at scale for a company. That's the one that has the most impact on users. It's effective against most of the attacks simply because it prevents attacks that require a reboot, and most of them do. Obviously, TPM plus pin does not protect against malicious insider who know the pin. In the future, maybe Microsoft will implement something that is specified in the TPM specification. It's the parameter encryption to prevent a bus sniffing attack. So this is the end of our talk. Quick presentation. We work at PwC. We are cybersecurity managers. You have a link to the slide, and now you have a good idea of what we do.
Thank you.
So, I don't know, Inba, are you here somewhere hiding? I have heard from reliable sources when you cross the Israeli border, you want to have burner devices because certain things might happen even if you are BitLocker encrypted with your disks. And certain other countries you visit, like China, you might also consider BitLocker kind of broken when you cross the border if you don't have full supervision of your laptop. The first method you referred to, Entra ID. Did you know that the global reader permission can read BitLocker for everyone, and that the global reader is part of a lot of the Microsoft managed identities? So the permission is in a lot of places in Asia. It's actually pretty easy to get BitLocker read for all the devices managed.
Indeed, that's not something we mentioned, but yes, if you have global reader on Entra ID, you can read that, and you can read a lot more than that.
Questions?
Yeah, nice talk. I wonder a bit why you ignored the chip select line, cause I think most of the traffic, especially in early phases, will be BIOS. And if you also read the chip select of the BIOS, you can directly throw away everything where that one is high, and then you get basically just the chunks you need.
Indeed, we could, but there are essentially three states. There's speaking to the chip select of the BIOS, speaking with the chip select of the TPM, not speaking at all, and maybe a fourth state speaking to another device on the bus. So excluding, we could adapt our decoder to exclude the chip select of the BIOS, indeed, to remove some of the noise, but it won't remove all of the noise here.
But in the beginning of the investigation, when you know you don't want to read that specific device, then you can basically use it as trigger to filter out what might be more interesting.
Indeed.
Yeah, I see one more. But I didn't see where.
Hi, thanks. I believe that HP and maybe other vendors now have this protection where if you open the lid, the TPM is automatically wiped of all the secrets. Is that something that you've seen commonly in use, and are more manufacturers going that way?
It's a BIOS setting you have to enable. It's called cover tampering. We never saw that in real life. The thing is that if you know the model, you know where to press, and you can just bypass the cover tamper protection. But it's out even on old laptops, just BIOS setting to put on, and once you have it, it's asking for the BIOS password. But there is a lot of BIOS password bypass techniques out in the wild, so that could also be bypassed.
Thanks.
Thank you for the great presentation. I have a question regarding BitPixie mitigation. What do you think about updating bootloader itself? Because new bootloaders support SVN, so the secure version numbers, which are supposed to prevent using old bootloaders. So how do you find the effectiveness of just updating the bootloader without revoking old certificate?
The bootloader here in BitPixie is under the control of the attacker. It's served by the attacker, so nothing prevents them to do that. What you could do is enabled PCR number 4. So we said that BitLocker only uses PCR 7 and 11 by default. If you can find the slide. So PCR number 4 is the bootloader integrity. It will take the hash of the boot manager. The problem is every time you will update, it will break the bootloader integrity, and you will have to re-enter the key.
I think Microsoft attempted to bring back this PCR4 to the standard configuration, and it ended with a kind of disaster.
Yeah, that's why the current recommendation from Microsoft is simply to revoke the old certificates for the old versions of the bootloaders.
All right, thank you.
All right, I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.